Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I am Sir Worldwide. Now, in this segment right here, we're going back into history. And I'm going to let this historian, Keith, give you some information that you need to hear. Keith, hit a grand slam.
All right, how you doing, Sir Worldwide?
I'm doing well.
All right, always a pleasure. Been asked to speak about a few things. You know, lots going on right now with Trump and the election coming up. Lots going on with the divisiveness and the division between different nations of people here in America. I mean, who are all American, but ethnically are from different nations originally. And there's a lot of stereotypes, negative stereotypes about my people. And when I say my people, I specifically mean people who are the sons and daughters of the slaves of America. Now, I don't want to call them African American. I don't want to call them black, because that's a color from a crayon box. African American is a term that came out of the 80s. Before that, it was Afro American. Before that, it was colored. You know, they always had a different thing, but or a different demographic term to apply to us. Other people, however, have always just been Italian, have always just been French, have always just been English. So there's no convoluted entity when you talk about thinking about something like that. However, it is with us, because they don't know who we are. And more importantly, the so-called black people in America don't know who they are. So that's real sad. And you can also go into other communities, because everything we're called today is based on what the people who colonized us called us. Very good point would be Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico in Spanish means rich port. I don't think anybody would refer to themselves as a rich port, because they're human beings. But the Spanish crown at the time decided that the wealth of that colony was such that we're just going to name it Rich Port, and all the people there will be called Rich Ports. And that's what Puerto Rican means, but really they're Taino indigenous people, Taino. And that's who they were when the first criminal, Columbus, Christopher Columbus, who did nothing but rape, rob, and pillage. If you read his journals, he'll tell you, I didn't put my sword down, not even for 1 hour. That's how much killing and maiming they did. In fact, Columbus had a rule, him and his brother Bartholomew, that every indigenous person had to bring them a gold tiding every day. You had to bring them X amount of gold, because they knew there was gold in this land, because they saw it when they got there. And if you bought your gold and paid your tithe that day, they would put a string on your neck with a rock, with a hole in the rock, a little hole in the stone of the rock, and they put it around your neck. Now, if you didn't pay that day, you wouldn't have the string with the rock on it, or the stone. If you did pay and lost the string, they would treat it as if you didn't pay at all, which means the punishment was they would chop your hands off. Yeah, the guy you gave the holiday to, Columbus, he was a real barbarian. He made people like Hitler look like a Boy Scout. How many millions did he kill, or was responsible for killing? And chopping people's hands off as a punishment. They can't even wipe themselves when they go to the bathroom. I mean, this is really, really, really barbaric, sinister, and the biggest terrorist you could think of. And this is Columbus, who everyone here reveres. And what did he do? He took some of the Taino brothers and sisters back with him to Spain, and started the transatlantic slave trade back in 1492, before they start shipping people from West Africa. So it was pretty sad that people revere this. Even subconsciously, they may say it's wrong, but he's a hero because he did it for their interests and their civilization, which now reigns dominant over a subjugated people who were here when he first came, who were mostly eliminated. So that's where we're at with that. Now, as far as the so-called black people are concerned in this country, and I say again so-called because black is a color in a crayon box. Most people are different shades of brown on the earth. The only ones who are not are the so-called white people, who are actually pink because they're different shades of red, and you can see the blood flowing through their veins. So this is who they are. They use terms like white because white represents purity, but they're not white, and they're damn sure as a nation are not pure. And then they use terms on us like black because that has a negative connotation. But we are not black in color. We're different shades of brown. So we need that to be understood clearly first and foremost. The next thing I want to say is that I hear some Caucasian people, because that's what they actually are. And if you look up the word Caucasian, it means cave dweller, because that's where all of those people came from, the Caucasus Mountains. And if you want to know where the Caucasus Mountains are today, they are on the border of Azerbaijani, Chechnya, Georgia, southern Russia, and the very eastern part of the Ukraine. That's where the Caucasus Mountains are located. Everyone who is Caucasian today at some point was there during the caveman era in the last ice age, I guess it would have been. And what we need to understand about the caveman civilization, because it's not very different today. Firstly, the caveman did not have the ability to speak. Let me say that again. The caveman did not have the ability to speak. He grunted and groaned. That's how he communicated. At that time, there were so-called people in Africa who you would refer to as black and brown, who were thriving. They were building pyramids, which you still can't duplicate today with all of your 21st century scientific information. You still don't have the technology to duplicate Khufu's Great Pyramid in Giza. You don't have it. With all your computers and everything else. The next thing is, when we were doing all these things, let's remember, you all were in caves. I'm talking about the red people, the so-called white people, who were in caves at the time, didn't have the ability to speak, and they didn't even know how to have a domestic relationship with their woman. What would they do? Well, I'm sure you saw it depicted in cartoons or even maybe some movies, where the caveman would have his stick, he would walk around, he'd see the woman, he'd conk her on the top of the head, knocking her unconscious. Then he'd grab her by the hair, and he'd pull her back to the cave, scraping her body, front, back, side, whatever, cutting it all up on the ground as he took her back to his cave. Now, if he's going to treat her like that, what's he going to do to her when he gets back to the cave? Is he going to make love to her, or is he going to rape her? Well, we already know the answer, because he got her violently in the first place to take her back to the cave. He raped her. And where did he rape her? In front of his rotten meat, which was sitting right there in the cave next to his defecation. Yeah, he defecated where he ate, which is a sin that we all should not do. But that's what the caveman did as a matter of general practice. He didn't know any better. So he was an animal, more or less, is the best description. When he came out of them caves, he came to the first civilization he really settled was Greece. Ancient Greece, Macedonia, Alexander the Great's father, what did he refer to himself as? Philip the Barbarian, because that's what he was, a barbarian. They were all barbarians. They didn't have a moral code at all. Most of them were homosexual pedophiles. They were boy lovers, as we call it. That's what they were. Plato got in front of the Senate in ancient Greece, in Athens, and declared his love for boys. You can look all this up. Yeah, they did try to prosecute, Socrates for corrupting the morals of the youth. But at the time, all of the youth was being corrupted because most of the Greek society lived with boys, not men, boys, as their sexual preference and as the type of relationship they wanted in their home in terms of a lover. So those are the kind of things that would happen. That was not happening, however, in the rest of the world, where people who were not Caucasian lived. That's what the Caucasian group was doing, which furthered when they settled in Rome, the patricians and all of them, when they came out of Greece and settled the peninsula, which is where Italy or Italy is today. They still, all you have to do is look up Caligula and Tiberius and most of the Caesars. They were huge perverts, pedophiles. In Caligula's case, he was sleeping with his horse, Intestatus, which he made a senator of Rome. I mean, this is mind-boggling to think about today. You know, guys sleeping with his great-grandmother, sleeping with boys, homosexual lovers. His sister Drusilla was a lover. And, of course, he tried to bring her back to life with necrophiliaism when she died, because he was so distraught that she died. I think she died of the fever. As a young woman. But the point is that when you start to look at all that history and you say, wow, these people are really animals, then you say, well, today it's different. They don't act like that today. Then you see the Catholic Church's behavior. And I mean, do we really need to belabor the point? They have criminal organizations that protect those who rape our children. This can't be tolerated, at least not by our ethnicity. If they want to do that to their children, whatever, that's their business. I'm concerned about them not doing it to our children. That's my point. Because they obviously are so powerful, you can't stop them. Everybody's tried to stop them. The might of the American court system couldn't even stop them. They even use what we call RICO laws, where they move people around to avoid prosecution, and still they were fine. Okay, I know 5 or 6 of them went to jail, and 500,000 or 600,000 of them did not. But the kids all were still molested nevertheless. And I'm saying that this is a practice that's been pretty much consistent since the days of antiquity. This is who these people are by nature in general. Now, sure, you're going to find individual exceptions. We're happy to see them. But the bottom line is, culturally and subconsciously, which equates to spiritually, a lot of these people are gone astray. And what else can you say? Now, some people are going to say, well, Africans were just on trees, and they didn't have nothing going on until the Europeans plucked them out of the tree, thankfully put them in slavery and brought them over to the West, because today they're better off than the ones on the continent. Now, you hear those things, but the problem with that is, first, where was the first university? When you ask people where was the first university located, you could say the first university was in ancient Kemet, which most people would call Egypt, because that's what it's named today. In 333 BC, Alexander the not so great came to Kemet and conquered it. And he renamed it Egypt, which I believe is Egyptos in Greek, which means bondage or slavery. And that's what he called the whole land. And it still has that name today. He called Libya, the land next to it, Libya, which means black, because at that time, well, over 5,000 years ago, there was no Sahara Desert. That's first. Secondly, until Alexander the Great showed up with the Macedonian Greek armies, there were no Europeans in that area, period. Period. And history substantiates that. Then when he conquered it, they began to mulattoicize the population. And that's how it went through the days of Rome. And of course, I'm trying to remember the queen in Nubia, which is just south of Kemet, or Egypt, which is today the modern day Islamic Republic of the Sudan. They stopped the Romans. The Romans never were able to come into Nubia because of the queen. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but you can look her up. She fought the mighty Roman Empire and beat their butts. And that's why they never came into Nubia. And what is the consequence of that today? Well, it's very valuable to us. Why? Because we know that Egypt has the second most amount of pyramids in the world of any country. But the first country, when you ask someone that question, so what's the first country? Most people, their mind is subconsciously racist against those people in Africa. So they would say, oh, Mexico, or someplace in Europe or Peru or something. They would leave the African continent, not thinking that Africans were smart enough to build pyramids, because they think Egypt was a white society and white people built the pyramids, which is not true, because Kemet was an African society, and the ancient Israelites who built the pyramids were dark brown, or what you would call Negro people. So that's clear. History substantiates that. So that's what happened. And when you look at what in the country that has the most pyramids today is Nubia, or the Islamic Republic of the Sudan. They have more pyramids than they do in Egypt. Most people don't know that, because then you have to admit that black people built the pyramids in Egypt as well, and all the pyramids. That the first university was in ancient Kemet. The first modern day university in 1500, which that year, the center of Western culture and society was in West Africa. Mali Empire, real quick, Mali Empire, and they had the first university in modern time in Africa. And then they built the second one in Spain when the Senegalese were controlling Spain. After the year 1000, the Arabs left, the Senegalese controlled it to 1492. So we want to just clear up a few of these stereotypes that black people are ignorant. You got your culture from so-called black people. Now next time, we can go into the difference between Negroes and Africans. But right now, just know that your Renaissance period in Europe, all of that come from when you were 800 years plus under Senegal and Moorish occupation in Spain and Portugal. That influenced Italy, Renaissance. Thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon.
Now see, ladies and gentlemen, y'all know me, I'm Sir Worldwide, I don't lie. When I say I'm bringing a historian on, I want to educate. Educate, thank you, Brother Mac. I want to educate everybody, not just the black people. Everybody needs to know the history, what's going on this planet. So you're going to hear Keith again, because he's, my God, the knowledge he has concerning history, it's just off the chain. Aloha.